idea of the teenager didn't exist before 1935. Back then, mid-adolescence wasn't something to pay attention to, just a stepping stone for adulthood. You were a child, and then you were an adult. There was no in-between. But then came the post-war baby boom, and millions upon millions of babies were being born every day. That meant that revolution was just around the corner, for in 15 years, these babies wouldn't be babies anymore. They'd be teenagers. Thus, the seeds of teenage culture were sown. In the late 50s, early 60s, there were more teenage-age citizens than ever before.
But I guess it was more important to be accepted by the guys than anything else.
A particular phenomenon occurs when a group of people, all experiencing the same thing, manifest into something bigger than themselves. Like how during American slavery, black slaves would band together, create songs, folklore, and traditions summoned from their shared experiences of oppression. They formed their own intimate world inside of a bigger, badder one. A similar occurrence happened in the 1950s and 60s, when there were so many teenagers filling up the world they spilled out into the atmosphere.
Well, you're such a baby.
I'm 16. What's such a baby about that?
Only these teenagers, they weren't fighting the oppression of a white slave master. They were fighting the oppression of their parents.
It's a little late for tears, isn't it?
Soon, they too manifested into something bigger than themselves, something they could hide themselves in. This teenage manifestation came in many different forms. There was teenage fashion, music, teenage subcultures, even teenage mannerisms and lingo.
Now, if you're gonna stay cool, you got to wail. You got to put something down. You got to make some jive. Don't you know what I'm talking about?
But most importantly, there was the birth of teen film. With teen culture on the rise, big entertainment companies caught wind of the world outside their glass offices. Youth being fleeting, they knew that if they wanted to make money, they had to work fast. So they tapped into a whole new market and created the teen movie genre. In its early stages, teen film was harmless enough. Movies like Muscle Beach Party and the Gidget film series starred obedient, straight-age characters with rudimentary problems. The characters were beautiful. They were white, they were blonde and thin, your stereotypical cool kids, guaranteed to make real-life teenagers swoon or preen with jealousy. And sure, these films were vapid, they were pointless and just plain ridiculous, but they were fine. They weren't hurting anyone. And these films weren't the only films being made about teenagers. There were grittier ones, too.
Just tell me one thing.
Yes?
Is it true?
Is what true?
Is your mother a nigger?
Ones that offered progressive insight about what it was like to be a teenager. Esteemed filmmaker Nicholas Ray put a cinematic eye to work in 1955 when he created the now cult classic. Rebel starred newcomers Natalie Wood, James Dean, and Sal Mineo, all tragically beautiful, playing the roles of angsty, flawed teenagers who were angry at their parents for not understanding them.
You're tearing me apart!
The film dealt with depression, rejection, teen rebellion. It even had a few queer undertones lingering in the plot. It showed a side to teenagers that adults had never seen before. It humanized them. Rebel Without a Cause was a critical success. It was Academy Award nominated and deemed a cinematic masterpiece, unlike some of its teen movie cousins. It showed that teen film could be artful. It could matter. It could be progressive, not just entertainment.
You can depend on me. Trust me.
The films that followed, like Blue Denim, Beat Girl, Teenage Doll, Ingmar Bergman's Summer with Monica, gave a raw perspective to the underbelly of teenage life. It gave teenagers a sense of familiarity, a sense of being listened to. But then, years later, something interesting happened. Teen culture sustained itself throughout the next few decades, constantly changing and evolving. During the 70s, teen film didn't change that much, though the teens were.
Summer loving had me a blast. Summer loving happened so fast.
Kids were more wild, more free, and by the 80s, executives knew that the formulaic teen film that once worked so well was soon running out of steam. Enter John Hughes, a film giant, hungry for more. He set on a one-man adventure and created the contemporary teen genre. A slew of movies depicting the mundanity of suburban teen life came out.
You wasted all my clear on another picture of Thor.
Thor's my hero.
Thor's a homo.
They were fresh, they were new, they were sexy. Something had changed between the beginning and now. Teen films weren't just innocent Susie Q wondering if Johnny will go steady with her, and they weren't exactly a disillusioned teenager figures out the meaning of life. They had elements of both, true, but they also had a new component to them: sex appeal.
It's World War II, and our ship is going down in the middle of the Pacific, and our only hope is the shortwave radio. Tune in, Tokyo.
Films like Weird Science, Nightmare on Elm Street, and 16 Candles all had sexual themes to them, even if they weren't exactly relevant to the plot.
I've done just about everything there is, except a few things that are illegal. I'm a nymphomaniac.
Teenagers were no longer people we had to understand, they were people we desired. Perhaps it was a sign of the times. America had continued to grow more and more vain, gaining newfound obsessions with youth and beauty. It seemed that teenagers had that, soft-skinned and in their prime. Oftentimes we want what we cannot have. We want what we do not have. So teen film continued to progress. It continued to get more and more sexualized until it became something completely different than what it had started out to be. No longer was the purpose to educate parents and allow teenagers to connect to characters their age. The purpose was to exploit an illicit fantasy of the sexy teen. So then came the 90s, the worst of it all. It seemed teen film was at an all-time low, coming out with incredibly inappropriate films and trivializing teen sexuality.
Be more specific.
In English? I'll fuck your brains out.
The people playing these kids weren't even teenagers. They were older and seemed much more mature looking. The kids in these films did what they wanted, and there were seemingly no consequences to their actions.
50 years from now, all the virgins you ever fucked, they're gonna remember you, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna tell their grandkids about that shit.
That telly, he sure was good in the sack.
These films didn't even seem like they were for teenagers anymore. They seemed like they were for horny dudes looking to get off at 16-year-olds. The stories were ridiculous, they lacked meaning, and the worst part is, they still made money. American Pie grossed $235 million worldwide on a $10 million budget. And that movie literally sucked.
This one time, at band camp, I stuck a flute in my pussy.
No one seemed to care that the producers of these teen sex comedies were selling fantasies of minors.
You wanna fuck me?
The teen genre itself is not inherently toxic. It is extraordinarily important for teenagers to have representation in a medium that they spend so much time watching. To feel as though you are heard as a teenager is invaluable.
Oh, you're only 18 years old.
Then I'm 19, then I'm 20. When does my life belong to me?
However, where the contemporary teen genre goes wrong is in its blatant sexualization of minors. Teenagers have sex, yeah, that's true. The problem is not that the teenage characters are having sex, but it's the way that sex is depicted and spoken about.
Suck me, beautiful.
What did you just say?
The overkill of sexual contact and crude behavior in teen film is ridiculous and nowhere near parallel to real life. Not only does it set teenagers up to fail, thinking that this is the way they must act, but it tells adults that this is the way teenagers act, creating unsafe situations for young people. What the teen genre needs is to go back to its roots. It needs to realign its purpose, to make movies for teens, not of teens. And yes, not all teen films are horrible, that's true. There are some really amazing films that are reminiscent of what teen film used to be. Lady Bird, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, Juno, are all able to make teen film interesting and relatable without crass over-sexualization.
Maybe you'd learn to pull yourself up and not expect everybody to do everything.
We have to be honest to our youth, not feed them with fanciful lies about how they should be acting. We should let kids be themselves and not taint them with over-sexualized fantasies. I'm a teenager. I'm 17. My friends are 17. I like being 17. I like that I can figure out who I am or what I am during this time of exploration, but that's not always easy with the constant pressure of feeling the need to fit into this mold that the media has carved out for me. I can't be Regina George or Cher Horowitz, but I can be myself, and that should be enough. Being a teenager is hard. It's full of angst, heart, and a whole lot of acne, but that's real. That's truth. And isn't that what film is anyway? Until next time.